It's time for another installment of me reviewing another game that's been out for a month, this time about a movie that nobody saw. First off, I don't care if you hate Michael Cera or think the movie's concept is stupid, or how the comic isn't manga despite the style used. I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, the game. While such a title might be groan-worthy to those familiar with the industry's track record on licensed games, don't fret. Released on Xbox Live Arcade on August 25th, this might seem like old news to PS3 owners who had a 2-week exclusivity on the title that launched alongside the movie's release. For purposes of this review, though, I'll be speaking of the XBLA version. The look and feel of the game is very old school, not just in the pixelated graphics, but in the references made. Just like the comic and movie, the game is unsurprisingly crawling with gaming references. You'll see Mario-style pipes, Ramona's tech attacks resemble Blaze from Streets of Rage, and the entire game looks to be modeled in the style of River City Ransom. Hell, even one of the game's secret areas is exactly where it was in River City Ransom. Keep an eye out for obvious nods to Mega Man, Double Dragon, and Kirby. For what little story there is, it follows the comics more closely than the movie, with exceptions here and there. Like most beat-em-ups of old, you're not given much reason as to why you're heading left to right and beating on anyone who tries to stop you from doing so. At least this game is based off an existing property with its own story, so if this is your only knowledge of the Scott Pilgrim franchise, you're probably going to be confused, or maybe you just won't care. Nearly all sprite work in this game was done by Paul Robertson, a laser enthusiast from Melbourne who, while unquestionably talented, has original works that could be described as unique. The bouncy women and brain-leaking zombies are about the tamest things he's done. In keeping theme with the 8 and 16-bit vibe, the entire soundtrack was done by chiptune rock hybrid band Anamanaguchi. The music is extremely catchy, but for the most part I find it to be rather hit and miss in areas. Unfortunately, one of my least favorite tracks in the game is the one you hear for the entire first stage, and as often as you come back to that stage to grind for money and buy items, you're going to hear it a lot. I will gladly play through stage 3 over and over again to hear that song, however. Other favorite tracks of mine include Dragon's Den, which you'll only hear in a muffled form until you reach the end, and the first and last fights with Gideon. For people more familiar with chiptune music, Anamanaguchi may not seem to change things up that often, and a lot of song choices in the game seem out of place, but the soundtrack is still a fun listen. Gameplay is purely beat 'em up, but, like River City Ransom, has a slight RPG twist. Most defeated enemies will drop coins which you can use to purchase goods in the game's various shops. Food items will restore health and guts points, and some will increase stats, while other items are merely stat boosters. All your stats increase on a permanent basis, and each one maxes out at 100 points. Strength increases damage, defense increases your hit point count, and decreases the amount of damage taken. Willpower increases your guts points, and speed, well, your speed. Certain foods can be used as snacks, which will restore your health once you've lost all your hit points, but unfortunately the game won't let you know which ones can be chosen as snacks, so you'll be forced to remember which ones as you purchase them. Like River City Ransom, the game is littered with objects you can pick up to use as weapons. This can range from the obvious, such as baseball bats and swords, to less obvious, such as ice blocks and street signs, to the downright useless, such as snowballs and plastic cups. You can even pick up enemies you've knocked down as weapons. If you've ever wanted to beat someone senseless with a fat guy, you have found your game. Your character, and subsequently the gameplay, starts out pretty slow, but really picks up as you level up and learn moves. This is the unfortunate implication of making level and money grinding a downright necessity, as the difficulty curve skyrockets between levels. So while you might be able to squeeze through levels 1 through 3 without much issue, level 4 will have you grinding to a halt, as it's the longest level in the game with some very damaging enemies. An under-leveled player won't last through the first 3 sections. Of course, what's the fun of a beat-em-up without bringing a friend or 3 along? The game allows you a choice of 4 characters. Besides the unsurprising inclusion of Scott and Ramona, you can also choose to play as Sex Bob-omb's lead singer Steven Stills and Scott's drummer/ex-girlfriend Kim Pine. There's even an unlockable character that you can get for finishing the game with all 4 characters. Letting you know would kind of be a spoiler, I guess. Ah, hell, it's Negascott, who cares? Interestingly enough, Negascott is more than just a palette swap, and has a bit of interesting strengths and weaknesses, as well as the best victory pose ever. Although Knives is restrained to being a character you summon with a button, there's talk of her being released as a DLC character once the movie makes its DVD. Other unlockables, such as additional strikers like Knives' father, are available, and if you're looking to unlock Sound Test, Boss Rush, and Zombie Mode, you'll need special codes to unlock them, so I'll include those in the credits roll. If you're looking to play online with a few friends, don't. As you've probably heard by now from every other review, unless you were strangely waiting for me to review the game, there's no online co-op. I'm not sure why, and I frankly don't care. It'd be nice if they managed to patch it in later on, but for now, I hope you got a few controllers laying around and a few friends willing to play. In addition to the lack of online play, the game is not without issues. Maybe my Xbox is shit, but I'd swear this game has a really hard time processing itself. The game always seems to stutter when it gets ready to loop a song again, and I've had it freeze on me more than often than I'd like to admit. Another issue with the game's strange AI clipping issues, where enemies will get stuck behind background objects. While this might seem like an advantage for the player, it does seem to have a tendency to screw you over when an enemy is just off screen, and the game refuses to let you go until the hidden threat is dealt with. This will cause you to run around the edges of the screen swatting aimlessly until the enemy finally figures out where to go. Issues aside, it's still a good beat-em-up. It's the best River City Ransom tribute since, well, the River City Ransom remake, and if you like Castle Crashers or just like retro style, then this is a good game to play, Scott Pilgrim fan or not.